On my shelf right now is a four-act play about Marcus Garvey. I have one more act to go. Written about 10 or 15 years ago, as a matter of fact. So it's been sitting there. And of course, I've been telling myself I'm going to ultimately get around to finishing that play. So you can see that my relationship with him, my spiritual relationship with him has been quite intimate. Intimate enough for me to, in my first writing efforts, to seek to dramatize his life and represent his life and his philosophy in such a way that it could advance my own development and advance the growth and development of my people. And he has been the center of my life ever since. And certainly I see myself as a descendant of Marcus Garvey and what Marcus Garvey was about.
Kingston was where Garvey's political views began to take shape. Unlike the countryside, where he spent an unhurried childhood within a close-knit community of small-scale peasant farmers, the city offered the opportunity to engage people from diverse backgrounds, occupations, and experiences. He got involved in the city's intellectual life, frequenting all places for debates, including barbershops and park bench gatherings. For weeks, he quietly observed, then after a shy approach joined in. His inexperience got him in trouble. Ideas which he felt were well thought out were torn to shreds. He smarted at the ridicule. "Shut up, country boy." The trailing laughter hurt Garvey deeply, and he vowed never again. He was determined to become learned. Since there were no elocution lessons offered in the public theaters or elsewhere on the island, he visited churches, studied the delivery of preachers and their sermons and manner of deportment. His pursuit of the art of public speaking led him to take lessons from a man who initially his role model, then mentor, Dr. Robert J. Love, an English-educated Black physician from Nassau, Bahamas, who settled in Jamaica and published a newspaper called The Advocate. He spent his entire career in economic resources, fighting to better health conditions for the island's suffering poor. With time and practice, Marcus became accomplished. This was no isolated undertaking, for as he sharpened his skill, he taught others. Soon he was conducting elocution contests with prizes donated by Kingston's prominent citizens. Organizing for social uplift is hard, demanding, full-time work, and anyone who has ever embarked upon knows. It became clear to the young Marcus that this part-time effort would not suffice. He decided after careful thought to quit his job at the government printing office. The bold step gave birth to another Garvey-initiated paper, The Watchman. The year was 1910. Garvey, a mere 23 years old, the economic rigors of running and organizing the newspaper soon drained his resources. Penniless and without means to a livelihood, he left the security of his home island for Costa Rica, where the United Fruit Company, now multinational Chiquita and Dole, was clearing ground and planting bananas with the use of cheap labor from the colonized islands of the Caribbean and Central and South America. There, a maternal uncle got him a job as a timekeeper, and thus began another mean lesson in the conditions of Blacks. The work environment was horrid. Deadly, snake and disease-infested swamps was only the crust of the misery. The roads to and from nearby towns were death traps, literally killing fields, where bandits regularly preyed upon the workers, robbed and often hacked them to death with machetes. Black bodies festered in the undergrowth and bloated till white in the country's rivers. Repulsed, Garvey resigned and headed straight for the capital, Port Limon. Upon his arrival, he found further to his dismay that what the bandits didn't get from the workers was often ripped by the unregulated banks. He protested, pressing upon the ear of the British Council to help their Blacks. "Subject, if they don't like the conditions, they can leave," was the reply. The brutal lesson on the value of Black life sunk in deep. In this video, we're going to be dealing with the life of Marcus Garvey. And let me double check and make sure. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with, I guess, the beginning of the life or an overview of the life of Marcus Garvey. I guess we'll say that. This will be an overview of the life of Marcus Garvey. And then I began that historical overview of the life of Marcus Garvey begins on page 13. But I began my reading on page 17 when it gets more into Marcus Garvey getting into his political realm. But it starts talking about how Marcus Garvey grew up in Jamaica and the conditions that he grew up in. First of all, growing up in a family of 10 siblings, where only 2 of the 10 siblings survived. His father was known for his strength and his power and his presence, and his mother was known for her intelligence and her grace and her beauty. His mother was a very beautiful woman, but his father also helped spark his intellectual prowess or his intellectual pursuit, because his father had a vast library. He had a library in his house, and it gave Marcus Garvey access to being able to read different things about history and philosophy, and just educate himself and just learn more and be able to think more and develop critical thinking. One thing that I learned about Marcus Garvey over and over, but it was reiterated when I was reading this, is everywhere Marcus Garvey went, he left his mark. He either built something or he organized something. Everywhere he went, from his early 20s even until the time of his death, everywhere he went, he left his mark. He either built something or he organized something. Despite growing up poor, despite not having access to all of the resources that he needed, he was determined to better himself and his people. He was determined to get a chance in life. So he quit school at an early age and worked with his grandfather as an apprentice in the printing shop. So as a skill set, his skill was in printing. And so that's why one of the reasons why you see everywhere he went, he built or he started a newspaper, because printing and the print newspaper was his skill set that he was able to build and learn from his grandfather, and he used that throughout his life. But he also, as I read, developed his speaking skills, his elocution skills. Marcus Garvey was known as one of the greatest orators of the African diaspora, and one of the greatest orators of his time. But as we read, it came because of his determination and because of the work that he put in to develop himself. In his early days, people really didn't take him seriously. But as he developed his skills and as he actually traveled the world and he saw the conditions of Black people, all of these things helped him be able to better articulate himself and what was happening to Black people around the globe. Right. So 2 skill sets we know he built. Well, he developed a practical, physical skill set of printing and being able to print newspapers and create newspapers, period. And then the ability to speak, the ability to give speeches, the ability to capture people's attention, keep their attention, and educate them, and even encourage them to follow the philosophies that he created. Hence, today we still all hoist the red, black, and green flag, and Garveyism has inspired all of us. Garveyism is at the root of all of us and all of the things that a lot of us do. So